With all your time in the courtroom, I want to start with you about this hearing today. Is this as simple as every American who's convicted of a felony, a convicted felon, I guess, ultimately on sentencing day, have to go through a meeting like what President Trump is going through today? Can you lay it out for us? And do you think that he will express remorse, and would that matter to the judge?
Well, let's start, Mika, at the back half. Will he express remorse? I think the answer has to be no. This is a person who continues to say that the trial was rigged, that the judge is corrupt, and that there was no crime, including that there was no crime even specified by the DA. You and I know that not to be true. So I don't expect to hear any statement of contrition or remorse from former President Trump. And that is a factor that will go into this pre-sentence investigation report by the New York City Department of Corrections and Probation. That having been said, this is a process that all criminal defendants go through prior to their sentencing. Donald Trump is no exception. What makes this unusual is that the interview is happening virtually, but the regulations here provide for virtual interviews in circumstances like this, where, for example, courtesy to the court and all of the precautions that would need to be taken for him to come and visit the Department of Probations, all of those things would really be unnecessary and costly for New York City, which has already incurred the cost of this trial. That's why the interview is happening virtually. It's also unusual for an attorney to be present, but as you know, Judge Merchan gave Todd Blanche his express permission to be present with former President Trump at Mar-a-Lago when the interview is held later today.
So, Lisa, let's get you in on a sort of an odd development that happened during the case. On Friday, the judge, Merchan, sent a letter to both parties in the trial alerting them to a Facebook post that had been made at the end of May, allegedly says, I'll read it, "My cousin is a juror," and says Trump is getting convicted. Thank you, folks, for all your hard work. Now, that post has since been deleted. We should also note that NBC News has not identified the poster or the validity of the claim. So we don't even know if this is really, if it's real. But that has not stopped the Trump and his allies from seizing upon it, suggesting the fix was in, it wasn't a fair trial, they'll be part of their appeal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So walk us through, what do we know about this, and could it actually have any kind of impact?
So let's start with, could it have any impact? If it were real, there are provisions where you can move to set aside the verdict under New York law. The only remedy for that, where conduct or juror misconduct is concerned, is to have a new trial. And what you have to show is that the juror misconduct or communications would have had a substantial impact, or even could have had a substantial impact on the outcome of the trial. But let's move backward from there for a second, Jonathan, to what we actually know about this situation. There's no question in my mind that Judge Merchan made this information publicly available because he knew that once he notified the parties, if he didn't control that public access, somebody else was going to. Based on screenshots that were taken of this poster's comments, and I should note, they made this comment more than once, it seems dubious that this person is related to a juror, much less that the person is really having any information related to the jury at all. In fact, the person's bio says that they are a professional expletive poster, that they take a lot of joy in trying to mix things up online, so to speak. That hasn't stopped the Trump campaign from shouting mistrial, as former President Trump did on one of his Truth Social posts. Do I expect that they will try and delay proceedings by demanding an investigation into who this person is and whether any of the jurors had conduct with this person? Absolutely. Do I expect that it will succeed? Absolutely not. And that's why I said on Friday, when this information became available, if this person actually knows a juror, this is unbelievably bad. If this person is just trying to create mischief, that's even worse, because they will have succeeded in derailing some of these proceedings without knowing anything at all, without having any legitimate impact on the process, and just trying to throw a bomb, metaphorically, into the process that has to continue and play out.
So there was some exclusive reporting by NBC News that Trump is scheduled for a Zoom interview with the probation officer tomorrow. It's over Zoom, which I think isn't typical how it's done, although this is not a typical scenario. How do you expect this to go, and what are you watching for?
Yeah, so the manner is certainly not normal. Usually it's in person, not by Zoom, but you can imagine because of Secret Service, et cetera, that accommodations have been made. This is one where Donald Trump really it's his to lose. There's nothing wrong with his telling the probation office, I didn't do anything wrong and I'm not admitting guilt and I'm planning on appealing. Every defendant has a right to do that. But if he were to start saying the kinds of things that he has been saying during the trial and after the trial and attacking the jurors, the witnesses, the judge, family members, to foment sort of an anti-law enforcement, a false anti-law enforcement sentiment, that's not going to go that well, to say the least. He'll also be asked a lot about his personal finances in terms of paying a fine. He'll be asked about whether he is associating with criminals. And I mean, this is sort of remarkable. It's just the kind of thing that you just focused on with your last guest. But, he's going to have to sort of discuss whether he still coordinates with Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon. Remember, all of those people have been found guilty by a jury and are felons themselves.
Donald Trump has a meeting with his probation officer ahead of his sentencing that's coming next month. So this is standard procedure for anyone convicted of a crime, but it's absolutely anything but standard, obviously, when it comes to the historic conviction of a former president. The meeting will help decide Trump's punishment after he was found guilty of all 34 charges in his New York trial. CNN's John Miller has new reporting on all of this. John, we also know that Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, is going to be present for this meeting. It's kind of leading me to wonder what's normal about this and what's definitely not normal about all of this.
So it is not unusual for an attorney to ask to be present, and when they ask, it's generally granted. But just about everything else is unusual. I mean, the probation department is going to want to go through what they call an intake process. Now, the other day I spoke to New York City's Commissioner of Probation, Juanita Holmes, who said she could not discuss the Trump case or any specific case, but walked me through the process. And what Commissioner Holmes said is the interview is family history, education, criminal background. Donald Trump will have to tell the probation department what they already know, which is he has 3 other open felony cases that are pre-trial right now. Employment history. He's worked for himself his whole life. Substance abuse, not an issue there. Medical condition, financial status, living conditions. I have a triplex penthouse in a building with my name on it. And he may have questions for them. Can I vote? Yes, while on probation. What will the conditions be? When do I have to report? How often? It'll be a routine experience for the probation department on one hand and very strange on another.
And also, we're talking about someone who's convicted who has Secret Service protection as well. I mean, you've done a lot of reporting on kind of the coordination that's necessary between Secret Service and all other forms of law enforcement around just the trial, around the trial. What is that? How do you now throw the Secret Service protection into all of this? What does that do?
Well, for today, not much, because it's going to be a virtual meeting via Zoom or something like that. But the conditions of his probation, the Secret Service will be with him all the time. The probation department could call them in as witnesses if there's an alleged violation. And I think one of the first things that's going to come up are, A, travel. If you're going to travel, and by the way, if you're a presidential candidate, you're going to travel. You need the permission of your probation officer. And number 2, I don't live in New York. I mean, I have a building here and an apartment, but I'm a Florida resident. Can I get my case transferred to Florida? I think that's going to be a likely request. And the answer is it can happen. One state's probation can transfer to another state for supervision if that's where the person lives.